Hello and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining our talk. Today we're going to discuss a little bit how we can create a sustainable circular economy for plastics with DePoly and the Odoo CRM. First, I'd love to start with a few introductions. So my name is Nemo. I'm the Director of Implementation for Europe for Sodexis, and I was the business analyst and the project lead on the Sodexis side for this project. And next I'll hand it over to Joanna for her introduction, and she'll tell you a little bit about DePoly.
Hello, I'm Joanna. I'm head of IT at DePoly, Swiss-based company that developed unique and novel PET recycling technology. And if you ask why, it's because we have a huge plastic waste problem. Plastics are basically everywhere. They are in the carpet, they are in the chairs, they are in the curtain behind me, in the computer, literally everywhere. And they are not going anywhere unless we do something about it actively. So currently, we have around 9 million tons of plastics in our environment. And why is that? I will tell you about it in a second, but here you can see an example of what kind of impact that plastic waste has on our oceans. So currently, we have the so-called new continent, which is created only by plastic waste, and it is 3 times bigger than the size of France. And the reasons behind it is because current recycling systems are failing. They are not sufficient enough to tackle the waste that we are producing, and a sad truth is that over 90% of plastics never gets recycled. They end up in our environment, meaning they end up in the oceans, they end up in landfills, or the incineration centers. And depending on the type of plastic, the reason why it is happening may differ. So for some types of plastics, the technology simply does not exist. For some types of plastics, the technology is limited in a sense of the feedstock that it can accept. And coming back to the PET plastic, so the type of plastic that DePoly is tackling, the issue is that today only so-called perfect plastics can be recycled, and that is, for example, a clean water bottle or some trays. But most of it, especially those post-consumer and post-industrial ones, will never be recycled. They will end up in our environment in this or that way. But the fact that they are polluting our environment is only one side of the issue, because plastics are human invention and they are being produced from fossil fuels. And because we are not using the materials, the plastic that we already produced, we put them in the environment instead of reusing them. We need to use new fossil fuels and extract them just to create new plastics, because the consumption of PET plastics and all the other kinds of plastic is growing. And today, it is calculated that around 10% of the yearly extraction of fossil fuels is being used to produce plastics, and by 2050, this number is going to double. And this is why we developed our technology, and at DePoly we are trying to address this issue. We created a technology that can tackle all the difficult PET plastics, including the unsorted, the dirty PET plastics, and we can turn them back into the original monomers, PTA and MEG, they were produced from. And those monomers are identical like those originally sourced from fossil fuels. That means we can create a completely new plastics without the need for new fossil fuels and taking the waste from our environment. And that is also done with the help of Odoo and the great team of Sodexis. So today we are expanding our impact. We have our pilot plant operating in Switzerland. We are currently building the showcase plant that is also going to be operational in Switzerland next year. And we are starting to take first steps for the first commercial plant that is going to be located somewhere. I cannot yet tell where exactly. We are the team of almost 30 people today. And when I joined DePoly 2.5 years ago, we were 7, if I'm not mistaken. So the team is growing, the technology is scaling, and it starts to being recognized worldwide. So we've been named technology pioneer by the World Economic Forum. And quite recently, we've also got the title of the number one startup in the top 100 Swiss startups award.
Great, thanks so much, Joanna, for telling us a little bit about what DePoly does and what your objectives are. I think it's a really awesome mission, and we're really happy that Sodexis could just be a small part of that puzzle and that solution. So now I'd love to tell you a little bit more about the DePoly use of Odoo and kind of the history of this project. So DePoly first started with Odoo on version 14 in 2020. They've always been hosted by Sodexis on our servers. Originally, their implementation was purely accounting focused, so it was really just the kind of bookkeeper using Odoo for entering vendor bills and kind of managing the purchase aspects and looking at doing bank reconciliation and bank sync to essentially keep track of the financial health of the company. We worked in the spring of 2024 to refine the purchase to the vendor bill workflow. As Joanna just told you, their team has been growing like crazy over the past 4 years, growing from just a few people to almost 30 people today. And so as they've been hiring and onboarding new people, we've really worked with them to, first off, migrate them to V17 this summer, and also to train all of the new people on that purchase to vendor bill workflow throughout the summer. We've really accompanied DePoly since day one in their Odoo journey, and just a small piece of that journey was evaluating the potential use of the Odoo CRM versus other tools available out in the market. And obviously they picked the Odoo CRM, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. We're going to talk. Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit more today about how they made that decision and kind of what factors went into picking Odoo above any other solution available on the market.
Yeah, so as Noemi mentioned, we've been trying to decide on a CRM tool because the team was growing. We established the commercial team with the salespeople, and we needed a tool that would help us structure the process and keep track of the pipeline. And originally, we've been considering also another tool that is purely inbound marketing and sales oriented. But since we were already users of Odoo, we reached out to Sodexis to ask them to assess our needs and propose us, suggest us a solution that could help us structure those pipelines and basically have our CRM in the same place where all the other apps that we are currently using. And as Noemi already informed you, and since I'm here, the decision was positive, and we decided to stay with Odoo also for the CRM. And if you ask why, there are a few reasons. For sure, the main one is that we have all the operations tracked in one tool. So it's like a fully integrated solution from the CRM through sales, manufacturing that we are going to launch soon, the delivery, and the accounting. So that was one of the key reasons why we decided. Of course, this way Odoo became our single source of truth for all the contacts and products and opportunities. But it was also important for us that it is integrated with the current tools that we are using to communicate with clients. So for example, here we used also the Gmail plugin. We have a nice analytical tools to keep track of our data, and the customizations are there if we need it. But what was the most important was that the Sodexis team could present all those features in a way that we understood that this is the solution that we need for our business, that is going to close the loop on our operations in one tool, the same way we are trying to close the loop on the PET plastic recycling. And here we are, still with Sodexis and Odoo.
Perfect. So now I'll speak a little bit about how we actually went about implementing the Odoo CRM for the DePoly team after they had made the decision. So first off, I'll highlight that the decision-making process did take some time. So we went through about 6 weeks of demos and discussion before a concrete decision was made, because as Joanna mentioned, they were really considering a few other potential tools on the market, and there were several different stakeholders impacted by this decision. it wasn't just the business team that had to be a part of the decision, but it was also the production team downstream, and then eventually the accounting team, because there's kind of each different department that has to play their role in the overarching workflow. And so we did some of the demos, we gave them the time to talk to other vendors as well, to consider connectors with third-party systems, and in the end, I'm really glad they made the decision to stick with the Odoo CRM, and I think they are too, because it does really enable them to have a full end-to-end workflow directly in Odoo, and you'll see that in a few moments in our demo. After the decision was made, then we went through about 4 weeks of configuration and training. And here, the main configuration way to review is how their products should be configured. So one of the things you'll note in the demo is that we use a kit for the recycling services package that they're selling. And that enables us to track the different pieces that they actually need to deliver to the end customer. We also use the e-learning app for the training, which is one of our best practices at Sidexis. We use the Odoo base e-learning app to record short demo videos up to 5 minutes each that basically teach each person at each step in each of our customers' workflows exactly what they need to be doing so that they're configuring the products correctly in the beginning as a prerequisite, and then that each person, in this case the business team, the pilot plant production team, and eventually the accounting team, that they're each taking kind of the right steps at their point in the process. And then we followed up the publishing of the e-learning courses with 4 weeks of Q&A sessions and hands-on support to really bring to life the entire workflow and to make sure that the use of their Odoo CRM and all the downstream steps were flawless. So at each step, we really helped support them and made sure that they avoided any of the common pitfalls, and we helped to kind of accelerate the process as well, because obviously this is not their core business, is the setting up of a ERP system like Odoo, but instead their core business is all about the enhanced recycling processes. So we let them focus on that part, and our team came in to help them with establishing their workflow in the Odoo CRM. And so with that being said, next we'll go ahead and actually see a demo of what this looks like today. So I'll highlight up front, like this is all Odoo based. Like this is a very standard, very simple workflow. And what I want to highlight to you is how at each step, there's a different team member that has a key action that they need to take. And all the information is unified in one platform, being Odoo, which helps avoid any mistakes or misentering of information or miscommunication between different team members. So whereas in the past they first off had no CRM, so no place to really track anything about their opportunities or their pipeline, now they have that pipeline that naturally leads into the rest of the steps in Odoo, and all the information's in one place. So this workflow really starts with the business team. They're going to create an opportunity in the CRM. They're then going to generate and confirm a quote linked to that opportunity. The confirmation of that quote creates the sales order, and that generates a delivery order with the correct scheduled date according to how they configured the product, and also the delivery order has two components. So this is where we're using the kit configuration of the product. So the sales order has one sales order line, but the delivery order has two different components, and this is very important for the DePoly team because not only are they receiving feedstock, processing and recycling the feedstock, and then sending back the final material, but they also have an electronic report of their internal analysis of what's the result on that recycled plastic that they need to send back to the customer, and they need to validate the delivery of that, the fact that they sent that report to the customer before they do any invoicing. So once that delivery order is created with the right parameters, then the pilot plant team steps in and they validate the sending back of the recycled plastic as well as the sending of the electronic report. And now the original sales order will be updated, status will be updated automatically to ready to invoice, and the finance team knows that they have to generate the invoice and send it to the customer. So instead of, whereas in the past we'd have to manually communicate at each step, you'll see in the demo today that this is actually done seamlessly with the configurations we have in Odoo. So now we'll switch to a demo database for this customer, and you'll see right away that I have 3 different tabs open. So these are for the 3 personas that I just mentioned to you. So we're going to start as a business team member working in the CRM app, making an opportunity, creating a quote, and then confirming it and marking our opportunity 1. Then we'll switch to the pilot plant production team. So here we'll start in the CRM, and we'll just go ahead and create a new opportunity. So here we can say perhaps in this case, we're going to make an opportunity for Fabien, the CEO of Odoo. And in this case, we'll say it's an OXP demo. because obviously that's what we're doing right now. And then we'll enter to start editing this opportunity. So we can say maybe we researched this company, Odoo, that might need our recycling services, and we've qualified the opportunity, so we'll update the stages, which you can configure directly in Odoo. Then we'll have a first call with them to discuss the scope of work. And finally, we'll agree on the scope of work, so we'll create a quotation. So here I just need to add that product for the recycling basic services package that I configured for this demo. And maybe on the call with the customer right away, they're going to confirm that order. So I'll go ahead and confirm this. As soon as I confirm this, you'll see that one delivery order is created. So we're not going to look at that right now because again, we're the sales team, we're not the production team. So the last step in our workflow is actually to go back through the breadcrumbs to the opportunity in the CRM and mark it 1. And you'll see here, it skips the next step in our pipeline and it goes directly from first call to 1. So this is perfect, very efficient sale. We've confirmed it, so now we can move on to the next tab, which is the view for the pilot plant production team. So you can see here, I'm in my to-do list as an operator in the pilot plant and I have nothing to do, great. But wait, we just made a sale. So here if I click enter on my keyboard, you'll see now that I have a to-do item that pops up that says I need to make a delivery for this customer from Odoo. And it's scheduled for in 10 days because that's how we configured the customer lead time on the product. If I open this document, I can see now the 2 lines that we mentioned from the kit configuration. So although we had 1 line on the sales order, this now is blown out into 2 lines, or it could be more lines depending on how you configure your kit. And you can see here we have the electronic report to provide and then also the recycled plastic. So let's say I'm very efficient and immediately I have the recycled product done, I'm going to package it and I'm going to send it out the door to my customer. However, I haven't done the electronic report yet because I'm waiting for the lab to provide the results. So I've entered 0 as the quantity I'm delivering for the electronic report, but I've left the quantity for the recycled product as 1. Now when I validate this document, Odoo is going to offer to create a back order for me because it knows that I haven't delivered the electronic report yet. So I'll go ahead and say yes, let's create the back order. So this first document is now validated and marked done, and it registers the fact that I've sent the recycled plastic. Now if I go back, I'll see I have, again, still a to-do item in my list that's telling me I need to still deliver something, and that's because I still need to deliver the electronic report. So on this document, at every step, I can see the source document, so I know what sales order this is linked to. Let's say a couple days have gone by, I now have the electronic report, I send it to the customer, so I'm going to validate this as well. Before I do that, I'll come back to the sales order, and I'll note that since I've delivered part of the kit, but not the entire kit, the sales order line still says that I haven't delivered anything. So if I look in the other info tab and I'm in the developer mode, under the invoicing status, it says nothing to invoice. So there's still nothing to invoice for the sales order, but as soon as I go ahead and validate that second delivery order to say I finished delivering the entire kit with the second component being the electronic report, now, if I flip back to the sales order and I refresh my page, it's going to update and let me know that I have delivered that sales order line, and now it is ready to invoice in the invoicing status. And so if we complete the demo by just simply coming to the 3rd tab, you can see here, this is the view the bookkeeper would have of the sales orders they need to invoice. And you can see here we already have 5, and if I simply click enter on the search bar, the 6th one pops up from the sales order that we were just working on, the sales order 70. So this goes to show you how each team member in the workflow for DePoly, being the business team, the pilot plant team, and the finance team, can simply have one page in Odoo kind of bookmarked, and they're working in their own apps, whether it be the CRM and the sales, or the inventory for the delivery orders, or finally the finance team on the sales orders to invoice and the invoices. And each team can kind of work in their own piece of Odoo, but the handoffs are seamlessly coordinated, all the documents are linked, and all the information is easily available.
Yeah, so as Nimo mentioned and I mentioned before, we reconfigured the way we're using Odoo with the purchase app and with migrating to V17, but that's not the end of our configuration work, so we are still looking for improvements and further developments, and currently we're working on the purchase and accounting improvements. For the next year, we are also planning the release of the manufacturing workflow for the pilot plant. And possibly we are going to look towards the V18 migration because we've seen some really cool features during this conference, which is like PLL budgeting and approval workflows in Odoo Studio.
Great, and just to wrap up the presentation for today, I do want to spend a little bit of time telling you more about Sodexis. Sodexis is an Odoo partner since 2012. We're 100% focused and specialized on only Odoo implementations. Our headquarters are in the United States, but we've had customers in Europe since 2019, and we now have offices in France and in Switzerland in Europe. We have about 45 business analysts, developers, bookkeepers, and system administrators that only work on Odoo day in and day out. We've delivered a portfolio of over 100 successful Odoo implementations in the past 12 years, and we're really happy to help our customers wherever they might be in their Odoo implementation, whether they're starting from the very beginning and they need help from day one, like DePoly did, or whether you're in the middle of your implementation and you're looking to avoid pitfalls or accelerate the process or rectify any issues you might have in your system. We'd be more than happy to help you. We have a strong expertise in the manufacturing and distribution space, but we're expanding that expertise just like Odoo is every day with adding new apps and new features. And that's it for our talk today, so we'd be happy to take any questions you might have at this time. Thank you.
That was a really interesting talk. If there are any questions, please feel free to write them via the QR code on the pad.
If there's no questions, that means it was really clear, right?
Yes,
and
definitely.
Simple and
absolutely
100% good.
But it might be that maybe some time for people to write questions. Maybe during that time, I can ask a question because it was really interesting for me as well.
Sure.
So I also work with partners in Australia. I'm part of the Australian office. And something that I wanted to ask was, when you were going through when you were evaluating whether or not to expand your scope of Odoo for DePoly, often there can be a lot of times where you see a workflow in the customer's workflow, and then the workflow in Odoo, and there's some discrepancy, and you have to decide, okay, does the workflow of the customer need to change, or does the workflow of Odoo need to change and you need to develop? So were there any such cases like this when you were looking at expanding the scope? And if so, did you have to introduce customization, or did you manage to find standard workarounds, or did Sodexis simply say, no, don't do that?
Well, we got a lot of support from Sodexis also in defining the workflow. So there was an input from our business team on how we see it and how it is working today, but there was also an input from the Sodexis team on what are the best practices and what is working within the basic frame of Odoo, so to avoid customizations.
Yeah, for sure. I think in general, some of our customers will hit very industry-specific restrictions or requirements that require them to customize certain things, but what you saw in the demo today was totally Odoo standard, and I think, as Joanna mentioned, it was an iterative process to get to the right place in terms of the product configurations, like using the kits, using the customer lead time fields and things like that that exist in the Odoo base, the way that DePoly can get the most value out of it. But in general, for this particular workflow, there was no need to customize by any means. The one thing that I think was brought up by the team at one point was in the CRM, we discussed having extra fields, for example, like a facility field in the CRM opportunity to track, is this an opportunity for the showcase plant in the future, or the pilot plant now, or the laboratory, which the DePoly team has, like all these different places where they could in theory do their recycling work. So we discussed that, and then we advised that we can just use tags for that in the meantime, and internal notes, yeah. And I think the idea was just that if the team found in the next 6 months or a year that they really needed that data in a structured manner in the database, we could always add a custom field later on. But there's no need to do that on day one, where you only have, 10, 50, 100 opportunities. It's still not enough volume to really warrant to adding that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so we just decided we would put it in the backlog and come back to it next year.
Right, it's sort of that efficiency versus volume versus frequency. Okay, we've got some questions on here now. So number one is, what V17 features were the most useful for DePoly when you made that migration to V17?
I think in general, all the features were way more user-friendly
Yeah.
in V17. We jumped from 14 to 17, so I had a chance to work with 14, and now in 17 it's just so much easier. I really enjoy the CRM. We took a quick look a few years ago on how it looks like in V14, and it is way more structured and offers way better overview for the moment, and that was also the main scope and the main interest of ours to jump to 17. And there also the connection that I mentioned, so the Gmail plugin
Right.
that is basically looping all the exchange of messages with the clients in one place. This is a gem.
Time saver.
Yeah, and we available in V15 and above. So
Yeah.
if they had not migrated,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been available in their old version. And we immediately, when we knew they were doing the assessment for looking at Odoo CRM and making that decision, we immediately gave them demos only in V17
Right.
because we knew the migration was going to happen in the coming weeks and months anyway. So we didn't even bother to show them V14.
Yeah.
We were like, this isn't going to convince anybody, you know,
Yeah.
comparatively to V17, we thought V17 was much stronger.
Yeah.
So we put that forward first since we knew the migration was happening in parallel.
Absolutely. So following up from that then, how long did it take to migrate to V17 and how hard was it?
The migration of V17 from V14, I think it took 3 months total
All in
with
all,
the training. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
took
Pretty
3
quick.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did about 1 month of like assessment
Yeah.
because they do have certain parts of their workflows that are customized and things that we wanted to reassess
Yeah.
if they were actually using the customizations or if we could decrease the amount of custom code in their database by removing some of them, and then they had third-party apps that had to be migrated too. But I think it was about 3 months once the decision was
Yeah.
taken to do the migration, and that includes the time to do the training.
Right, okay.
And then the cleanup afterwards, so it was like super neat.
Okay. So how was it for your team, like getting used to the new UI changes and the...
Well, for me personally, it was great because again, V14 was quite heavy to work
clunky,
with.
yeah.
For the team, it's difficult to say in terms of the comparison because the team was quite new, so they almost started working when we migrated to
I see.
V17. So
Okay.
but it is definitely worth doing.
Yeah. Okay, there is no more questions here. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
talk.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting. Thank you all for coming. And see you in the next one.